And so here's the thing though, is like a lot of people when they hear gender affirming care, they immediately think surgery. Oh, gender affirming care is when you get surgery to make your body match the gender that you've stated you are. So when we say like, oh, people like trans people deserve gender affirming care, what they hear is as soon as somebody says they're trans, they immediately get put on the list for surgery and then they go get their surgery. That's not gender affirming care. Let's going to start with one that I think I've already cropped my thing for. Missouri Attorney General withdraws rule limiting trans care for children and adults. So there was a rule in Missouri that he submitted that was going to basically make it impossible for trans people to get gender affirming care. Yeah, and he pulled that rule recently. Now he said
the reasoning though makes me kind of upset. Not gonna lie.
Yeah. That's it kind of puts a damper on like they updated on yesterday with a statement from the ACLU. The ACLU statement is very positive. Excuse me, it's very positive. But yeah, the reasoning that he gave for pulling the rule does kind of put a damper on that. So he says, we were standing in the gap unless and until the General Assembly decided to take action on this issue. The General Assembly has now filled that gap with a statute. The statute being that like now trans kids can't get gender affirming care. Now the rule was stopping kids and adults from getting gender affirming care because, you know, they always say that like, oh, we do it for the children. We care about the children. But then as soon as they get the opportunity to, they institute laws against adults getting it as well. And
it's because it's very easy to get people on board with the we're doing it for the kids. It's a blind spot that a lot of people have where they'll go, oh, I would do anything to protect children. I would do anything to protect kids.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people that are very left-leaning on a lot of issues will then come back with like, but I don't want them doing surgery on kids to remove their penises. It's like,
cool, we don't do that.
They're not doing that though. So like, if you don't want them to do that, that's fine. They don't.
Yeah, that's one of those. It's one of those really agitating things to deal with because it's like it's so
easy to find the information.
You have to first disillusion somebody away from the idea that that made up reality is happening. And then you can move forward because you've got to first be like, hey, by the way, kids are not at threat. Kids are not at risk. And it's very hard to get somebody to be sold on that because they're like, but I was told they were at risk.
Yeah.
There's like a whole freaking chain of bullshit you have to deal with at that point.
Yeah. And it's all the same crap. And it's so easy to learn the truth about these things, but nobody does the basic research. It's very frustrating.
And then they'll come back. Oh, sorry, go on.
Did you see the bit in the rule where it's like, so the rule would have prohibited providers from offering surgery, hormone therapy, and other treatments to transgender people unless they had resolved all mental health issues, undergone at least 15 hours of therapy, and displayed 3 documented years of gender dysphoria.
How does that even work, though? The dysphoria is one of the mental issues we're trying to address with the hormones.
Not to mention, like, not treating gender dysphoria can cause other mental issues. So if you're not allowed to treat it until you get all the other issues resolved, it's not going to resolve.
I have a feeling that dysphoria may or may not have a comorbidity with depression. Just
what
saying.
Do you mean a feeling? It does. It absolutely does.
So here's the thing, though. The thing to think about with this is always these oversights, I am thoroughly convinced, are not bugs. They are features. They are ways to say, no, we've done our part for the trans community. We've done what we can to make sure that things are better for them. And then, lo and behold, things actually aren't improving for them.
Here's the thing. The therapy in 3 documented years of gender dysphoria, that's actually pretty close to being in line with, I think it's the APA recommended guidelines for treating of gender dysphoria. It's like, and actually that's specific to kids, is that before they'll do anything, before they'll even consider something like a mastectomy, you have to have been in, and it's not just 15 hours of therapy, it's you have to have been in therapy for 2 years at least before they'll even consider doing a mastectomy on you. So that's actually pretty close to the APA guidelines. So like that part's not bad. It's the resolve all mental health issues thing, because like that's not like what if they have ADHD or something like that? Like that's not a resolvable issue. That's something that you have to live with forever.
There's a side of this though that I do hold contention with, though, is even the 3 years of documented gender dysphoria. I'm not sure if you've watched Philosophy Tube at all, but there was a video that she did that where she went over the entire process she took going through the NHS to get her hormone replacement therapy, get her surgeries taken care of. The process, and it had similar restrictions of like, hey, we need this to be documented for multiple years. Doctors would do things like deny when she would go like, hey, I'm suffering from this. They would do things like, we don't think that's the case. Are you sure that you're actually dysphoric? Like they would carrot and stick for multiple years. And she ended up having a video, it was like an hour and a half long, going through all of the legal loopholes she had to go through in order to get her surgeries, to get her HRT, to get her basic, things that she was entitled to as a citizen of the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
And yet she couldn't get any of them because they had those legal loopholes. And then pointed out that even things like dysphoria being one of our criteria that we use, it's still not a thing we wholly understand in the first place. So there's even an argument about having it as one of our rules that we need to worry with when it comes to trans people. So I don't know. It's a fascinating video, if not a very depressing video to watch if you want to know the reality of like going through what we consider a more functional healthcare system.
And so here's the thing though, is like a lot of people, when they hear gender affirming care, they immediately think surgery. Oh, gender affirming care is when you get surgery to make your body match the gender that you've stated you are. So when we say like, oh, people like trans people deserve gender affirming care, what they hear is as soon as somebody says they're trans, they immediately get put on the list for surgery and then they go get their surgery. That's not gender affirming care. Gender affirming care is you spend years in therapy working through whether or not you actually are trans or whether there's something else there. And then when you work through that and you figure out that, oh, actually I am trans, that's when you start to consider the possibility of surgery. And like you might start hormones before, because like hormones generally like are reversible. So like if you start taking estrogen, if you're a trans woman, and then like partway through you're like, oh, I started growing boob.
That one, from what I understand, that one's actually not true.
The boobs don't go away?
The boobs don't go away, just like they don't go away if a cis woman starts taking HRT. If a cis woman starts taking HRT and suppressing their estrogen, their boobs don't disappear. They don't start shrinking generally. And also, if a person is taking testosterone, the vocal cord changes that they undergo after a while also are considered one of the things that is not as reversible. They can do training to re-feminize their voice, but it's not this. But it'll be closer to what happens when somebody has done vocal training and they're trans femme, as opposed to being a cis woman.
Okay.
So it's
not fully reversible, but it's easier.
It's not fully reversible.
It's easier to reverse than actually getting the full surgery.
Yeah. So just wanted to make sure we didn't have that one out there, because I actually got called out on that.
Thank you
too.
for correcting me. I appreciate the call out. See, this is the difference between, like, I hate to break things up into left and right, but sometimes things are left and right. And this is one of the key differences I've noticed between left and right, is that all of the content creators that I am aware of on the left, or not necessarily that I am aware of, the ones that I listen to regularly, if I say something wrong, and if they say something wrong, all of the ones that I listen to, if they say something wrong, they want to be corrected on it. They want to be presenting correct information. And so, like, yeah, I said something wrong. You called me out. Thank you for calling me out. I appreciate that.
This is friendship.
Yeah, but then people on the right, like you correct them on something, and they just deny that you're correct about the correction.
They grandstand because because like that's the thing, like on the right, a lot of times people have the illusion that they need to show strength. most people on the left probably have the understanding that we don't need to show strength. Strength ain't too important. Being
Well,
right's a lot more important.
I think it might be a different definition of what strength is, because I consider being willing to admit when you're wrong and then correcting it to be a sign of strength. Like it's a weak-minded person who insists that they are right in the face of all the evidence against them. Like it takes moral fortitude to be able to say, like, oh yes, this thing that I put out there was wrong. I'm sorry for putting a wrong thing out there. I would like to correct that. That takes strength to do.
Have you considered having faith?
I used to have faith, but whatever. I don't know what to say about that. Anyway, ACLU's statement on this was, after weeks of embarrassing Missouri on the national stage, the Attorney General has finally joined everyone else in recognizing that his hasty attempt to usurp the other branches of government cannot withstand scrutiny. That's not why he removed the rule. I mean, there might have been a certain amount of public pressure that influenced his decision to do that.
He didn't want to have what's going on in Tennessee to happen to him. Because in Tennessee, the Justice Department has been hammering Tennessee lately. Because what they've been doing with trans people is saying, like, hey, trans people aren't allowed to get gender affirming care that cis people can get. And the Justice Department is like, wait, what? Wait, hold on. Could you repeat that, but in not stupid?
Steve Weber says macho bravado is not exactly strength, IMHO, in my humble opinion.
It's the naive understanding of strength. It's a 10-year-old's understanding of strength.
Yeah, so I've actually I don't know if this is true. I'm not a military guy, so I've never joined the military. I was in Air Cadets for a while as a kid, but I quit. And then I was in the Navy League for a while, and I quit that too because and this is an ADHD thing. I just, like, if somebody gives me an instruction and I don't understand the reason why, I have trouble following it without question. So
I have the same problem.
The whole follow orders, why? Because I outrank you. That's why. That's not a good enough reason for me. I need to understand the reason if you want me to actually do it. So, like, I don't do well in those scenarios, and I never got promoted. And really, like, thinking back on it, it's like teaching kids, like, kind of indoctrinating kids into this military thing, and they'd have other kids that have higher ranks and now get the power trip thing going. It's like, I don't think that's a very good idea.
I think, I'm in a very, very military family. Cousin was Marines, grandpa was Navy, dad was Air Force.
Mike Little was Marines. Just saying.
Everywhere. The only explanation I ever really got to the follow the chain of command because you have to is because it's training for if you're on the battlefield. When you're on the battlefield, the seconds you spend questioning it are the second somebody dies. That's the only explanation I've ever gotten that made sense to me. But at that point, I'm just like, but we're not on the battlefield right now. Why does that matter right now?
Yeah, I was going to say that does make a certain amount of sense. But see, this actually kind of plays into the gun control debate because this is completely off, complete tangent here that actually is only very loosely related. But one of the pro-gun arguments that, like, they say they need to defend themselves against the government or whatever if the government tries to overstep its power and authority or whatever. Like, these same people that are thin blue line, they have the thin blue line flags and it's
the thin blue line between chaos and
they suck the government's dick on one side and then say I gotta have my guns to fight off the government on the other side. That's another issue of the other issue that I'm trying to bring up. But one of the arguments, like, we got to defend against the government. And when people point out, well, the government has, like, tanks and drones and stuff, I don't think they're going to be scared of your AR-15. The counter to that I've heard is like, oh, well, the military is not just going to blindly follow orders. A bunch of them will defect and bring all their military equipment with them so that it'll be an even fight.
Historically, that's not what's happened. Historically, they blindly follow orders.
Let's just grant the argument. Let's just grant the fucking argument. Okay, the military, like, a good chunk of the military is going to defect and bring the equipment with them. Okay, so why do you need the AR-15? You don't, because now you have tanks. Okay, but that's actually a really stupid argument because, like we've just been talking about, a big part of military, culture is you follow your orders. You don't question orders. And, like, it takes a really really obviously illegal order for people to actually start questioning it. Like, if it's not obviously illegal, they just do what they're told, generally speaking. Like, I'm not saying that military people don't think about things and don't consider, and they don't like grumble amongst themselves about how, oh, that's a stupid order. Like, I'm not saying that everybody's in the military is a mindless drone, but like, that is the training. Follow the orders without question and then think about it later.
Yeah.
Adam Broughton says, geez, I'm in the CAF, that's the Canadian Armed Forces, and I struggle to listen to orders that don't make sense, but no one else will offer me equal pay I'm making now. And that's actually one of the insidious parts of the military, is they entice people in that would not otherwise join by basically being like, well, you don't need any qualifications and you can get some really good pay out of it. And sometimes you can get qualifications, like people join the military to go to school and have them pay for their school.
And that's the whole purpose of the GI Bill here in the States. Or, just in general, this is one of the reasons why we had such a fuss whenever Trump banned trans people from the military here in the States, is because the military is one of most Americans' easiest access point for healthcare.
Yeah.
Plain and simple. And trans healthcare was one of the things that you could get through the United States military. There actually is a higher proportion of people in the United States military who are trans, versus the trans audience at whole, versus the amount of people who are cis. And a lot of it's because they can afford their HRT through it. They can afford, as long as they are in the military long enough to get their full ride of healthcare, then that's taken care of for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, so Scott Delahunt is saying the CAF is allowed to disobey illegal orders. I'm pretty sure that's
the
same thing in the American military. It's like any developed nation, the military is allowed to disobey illegal orders. The problem is you can't expect every military... you can't expect every soldier to be a lawyer who is familiar enough with the law to know whether or not an order is illegal and whether or not they'd be able to defend themselves if they disobeyed it. Like, there's the obvious shit like, hey, I order you to go into that village and, gun down all the women and children.
I order you to do a Billy Cohen from Resident Evil Zero. Have fun.
It's like, yeah, no, that's obviously not that. But like, hey, these guys in Waco, Texas have a bunch of guns on their compound and they've been threatening violent revolution or whatever it was that incited that incident. Let's go and put that down. Like, the military won that one. And they didn't have a bunch of guys defect to be like, no, they have a right to bear arms.
Yeah, this is one of those things that I don't... The idea that, a true American patriot would side with the populace. No, a true American does not fucking exist. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and then Adam Broughton says just because an order is brain dead doesn't make it illegal. Because, yeah, that's another aspect of it, is that you can have stupid orders that are perfectly legal.
Mm-hmm.
Canadians have the right to arm bears. No, we don't. We have the right to arm moose.
The moose were already armed.
No,
that's their head.
That's the geese.
Oh no!
Did
geese
you know?
Was never an option.
Did you know that geese have teeth on their tongues?
What? Why?
You see that?
The fuck? Why? Why are geese the incarnation of evil?
They just are. Like, what the fuck?
What?
There's no way that's... It's absolutely fucking real.
You know what the worst part about that is?
Okay,
those
that
are
one's
serrated.
This one's not real. I don't think that one's real.
Those are serrated backwards.
Yeah.
If that tongue gets anywhere near you, it ain't coming out without a chunk of your flesh.
No, geese are evil. Like, they're not technically teeth. They're like keratin something or others or whatever. Like, they have teeth on their tongues. They have teeth on their tongues.
I watched the movie Teeth. That's teeth enough for me.
For our audience who want to give a quick overview onto what the movie Teeth is about, for those that might not be familiar.
The movie Teeth is about a girl who has what's called... It's a real medical condition called vaginal dentata, but it's not an accurate representation of the medical condition.
No, it is
not. Basically, the way it manifests in the movie is if somebody tries to sexually assault her, if she doesn't consent to something, teeth come out of the vagina and just do what teeth will do to a phallus that is unsuspecting. There's a moment where I believe her brother tries harming her, and it gets ripped off, and his dog eats it, and it's honestly it's kind of funny, even though it's so gruesome. The whole There's a whole lot of bad stuff that happens in that movie. I don't want to go through the entire thing, but yeah, the premise is vaginal dentata. One of the funniest scenes from that is a doctor who like tries to give her an inspection and then tries to be more handsy than he should be, gets his hand bitten off, and then just like starts screaming vaginal dentata, vaginal dentata while he's bleeding out.
So Scott Delahunt says geese remember that they were once dinosaurs and are pissed over their final form. All right, moving on.